Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for our webinar on It's Raining a Menagerie of Records. Today, we're going to be going through what is records management within Laserfiche, licensing requirements, how to set up your schedules, defining a vital versus a permanent record, and implementing holds. And then from there, we'll jump into some demos on how to set up those schedules and how to use them both manually as well as automatically via workflow. And then we'll finish it all out with a demo of public records requests and using that within Laserfiche. So a couple of housekeeping items to start with. Like usual, everybody will be muted throughout the duration of the presentation. However, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the questions box at any point. Slides and screenshots will be available upon request, and then this session will be recorded and available to you through our YouTube page within the next couple of days. Questions will be addressed at the end, but again, whenever you have them, feel free to post them in there and we'll come back to them at the end. So we're going to dive right in. What is records management? Well, Google tells me that Laserfiche records management is the systematic process of managing the life cycle, creation, retrieval, storage, and disposal of digital and physical records. On the screen here on the left-hand side, I have a Laserfiche folder structure. And many clients of ours would attribute this folder tree to records management within their organizations. And in a lot of instances, this folder structure may be enough. However, if you're an organization such as a government entity or finance, healthcare, a folder structure may not be enough. There are regulations that are required by organizations to ensure that their files are being retained for a specific amount of time, and that audit trail must be available as proof the rules have been complied with. So when organizations are bound by these regulations, they can take advantage of Laserfiche to implement a compliant records retention policy for their records management needs, allowing them to meet Department of Defense 50.15 certifications. So again, allowing your organization to electronically store your records and get rid of those paper files. So what is records retention? If you thought it was just a folder structure, you might be wondering, what is it? Well, records retention is a practice by which organizations maintain records for set lengths of time and then employ a system of actions to either direct, store, or dispose of those files. The Laserfiche Records Management module is an add-on to most Laserfiche systems. So if you've got a United, Avante, Rio, or a Laserfiche subscription system that is the professional tier, records management is an add-on to those platforms. If you are on a Laserfiche subscription-based platform that is business tiered, records management would already be bundled in. In addition, to make your Laserfiche system compliant with the DoD certifications, you would also need to maintain Advanced Audit Trail. So Advanced Audit Trail is just another module that you can add on to your system. Again, it's very similar to records management, where it's an add-on to most, unless you're on that business subscription tier or already on a Rio platform. But Audit Trail is something that manages and monitors all of the events happening to a document once it goes into the repository. So it's just another way to have a trail on happenings within your repository. So you might be wondering, where do you start? Maybe you have a Laserfiche infrastructure, maybe you are just getting started with Laserfiche. Where do you start with your retention policy? And if you've ever been on any of my webinars, you may have learned that I'm a super big advocate for Laserfiche's Getting Started guides. I think that these Getting Started guides are some of the most helpful resources you can find for helping yourself navigate through different Laserfiche modules, and records management is no exception. So on the GoTo webinar screen, if you take a look at the handouts area, I did actually attach the ebook for getting started with records management. And so if we dig into that, the first step in developing a records management strategy is identifying your organization's records. I think the guide gives a good kind of series of questions to answer yes or no to really identify if this is a document that needs to be retained or if this is something that's related to personal affairs or not. Again, if you are experienced with records management, you may already know the answer to all of these questions, but if you're just getting started, again, this is a really good resource. Additionally, here at CDI, we use an Excel document that can help you get started with this process. So when we talk about identifying your organization's records, I really mean just coming up with a list of documents that you are archiving. So I want to start out with looking at the Excel document that our team works through when we are assisting customers deploy their records management. And so what I really want to focus on is this column E right now. So it's labeled document type. And honestly, we are just looking for a list of document types. You'll see in this Excel document down at the bottom, there's lots of different tabs. And so typically when we start these conversations, we want you to start thinking about document types that are relevant to your department. And so if you're just the records manager and you're assisting other departments with their deployments, this is something you're going to want to work through with them. You're going to need the departmental managers to give their insight on the different document types that they have to ensure you're getting a complete list. And again, we don't want to focus on necessarily all the other stuff in this report, which I'll kind of go through. We're just going to start with creating a list of document types. So if you are not new to Laserfiche, but you are new to starting to think about, how you want to approach your records management, you might actually already have a folder structure set up. And so I just kind of want to pull up this screenshot, which maps how I have this Excel document built out. So this is my repository. We've got a root folder called reports, and then we've got it identified by year, and then subfolders for monthly, quarterly, year end. And then these are all of the documents that would go in there. And so as we look at the report and Excel document and we start to put it together, we can see our root folder, our category, our second folders, and then the documents that would reside within those folders. Again, if that seems too daunting to start with, just get that list of documents and start there. Additionally, when you start automating your processes, you'll want to start thinking about what your naming convention will be. So we oftentimes will recommend at the point once you have your list created, you start thinking about what you want your naming convention to look like. And then our team here at CDI will help you fill in the gaps. So like, how do you get to this naming convention? How does that work? Laserfiche can help you automate all of that. But once you have all of your document types, then what we will focus on next is the stuff in this kind of green area, which is mapping out what the retention should be for those individual document types. So I do want to call out that when you are starting with records management in Laserfiche, this process can seem the most daunting because it does take a little bit of research and time. However, it's not necessarily hard. It just takes time. And so what we're going to do next is, we know we've got financial reports and these year-end reports. I'm not sure what the retention schedule is, so I need to figure out what that is. And so the easiest way to do that is to start by just Googling, what are the records retention policies for your state? And so I'm just going to drag over a window here. And I am based in Minnesota. And so you might want to Google, what's required as of your state. And so we're just going to kind of walk through it. So records retention for Minnesota. I have already read through a lot of this, so I kind of know where to look, but ultimately Records retention for government entities can be found here on the Historical Society's website. So you might already have access directly to this, or you might need to navigate it, for your own state, but they should be similar. And not all state records retention schedules are created equally. Some have more details than others. So it does vary from state to state. And sometimes if you are missing pieces of information, you might need to reach out to your state's disposition authority to get approval on your retention schedule that you're setting up. So we're going to go in, and for cities, I want to see the retention schedule, and so it's available on this PDF. What is really nice about having it online like this is instead of having to read through these 99 pages of retention schedules, you can oftentimes do a Control F on your keyboard and find whatever language you're looking for. So again, I'm working on reports for annual reports, and so I just typed in financial reports and we can kind of jump to where we need to be. So I'm not working on election type documents, I am working on financial reports. And so I can see here, we've got financial reports and statements as audited comprehensive annual financial report. So these are permanent records available to the public. So in my Excel document, I'm going to find this. The retention schedule is permanent. And then the cutoff on there, let's see here. Sometimes they have the cutoff information and sometimes they don't. So it looks like this one says as audited. And so as long as the report has been audited or after audit, that's when we know the document can be cut off, and then it will go into its permanent retention schedule. And the disposition is we're not going to destroy it. We're not going to push it to Ascension. We are just going to leave it as a permanent record in our system. So we've got that mapped out. And the reason why we typically recommend you create this Excel document for each of your departments is because later on down the line, we can use this information to build a fully automated process for you. So our team will take the information you fill out in here and we'll push it into either SQL tables if you're self-hosted or into lookup tables within a cloud environment so that, again, we can automate this entire process. But for today's sake and getting us started, we're going to do it all manually. So I'm going to jump into our cloud environment here. If I find my right window, whoops. All right, here we go. So we're going to look at our demo repository. So everything that I show today, I'm going to be showing you in Laserfiche Cloud, but I do want to call out that the records management configuration in a self-hosted environment is very similar. There are a couple of things that can be automated more easily within a self-hosted environment, but again, you can get really the same results within a cloud environment as well. So I wanted to do a quick little poll because I'm always interested in who's got what platform on the call today. So I'm going to launch a quick poll. Again, just seeing if you are cloud-based, self-hosted, and kind of where we're landing, or if you're not sure. Awesome. So it looks like most of our users online today are self-hosted, and then about 25% of them are cloud, and then the other 25% aren't quite sure. Which again, if you're not sure or you have questions, of course, you can always reach out to us. We are happy to help. So let's continue forging forward. So in the cloud environment, we are going to navigate to our records management configuration area. And so to do that, you're going to click on the waffle or the navigation icon, and we're going to go into repository administration. And so if you are a self-hosted environment, in this scenario, you would likely jump onto your server where Laserfiche is installed and then navigate to your administration console, and then you can get access to your records management area. So over here on the left, we've got our records tab. And so we're gonna, whoops, oh man, I can't read my words and show you my screen at the same time. That's tricky. All right, so now that we're logged in, we're gonna kind of talk through what each of these tabs and sections mean. So this is, again, the records management administration area. And so we're going to walk through these tabs. The records properties is where you can set up all of your retention properties. And so if we are looking at these review cycles, this refers to the scheduled intervals in which records are reviewed. So if there is a cutoff instruction that is time-based, then you would set up your review cycle here. And something I want to call out is that Laserfiche actually has all of these review cycles already put in here. And so unless your retention policy has something separate, you shouldn't really need to add anything in this review cycle. Events, these are occurrences that may trigger certain types of actions on records, such as cutting off the record's active status. These events are essential for managing the life cycle of the records, particularly in determining when a record should transition to a different stage, such as from active to inactive. So if we are, thinking about a contract or, something customer related, once they sign up for a particular product and that's closed out, that would be your closeout event. That was a really bad example. So another example of that would be you bring in a document that termination of employment. This is one I'm always good with, HR. So you have to retain employee files for 7 years as long as they're active employees, or for 4 years once their employment has been terminated with you. And so those are events that happen to the documents which signify what their retention should be. And so in the event of an employee's termination happening, that will be your signifying event saying, hey, follow the next steps for the retention schedule and retaining that document. Locations, this section we don't see very widely used, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but if you needed to transfer we see it more likely used for physical records management if you are managing that within Laserfiche. You can select a location of where those physical records might get moved, within your automated Laserfiche environment. So again, this isn't something you'll use very frequently. Review cycles is already set up, and then events, some of them are set up, but you might need to consider your own events for whatever your document types are. So then we'll go into the next tab, cutoff instructions. So the cutoffs instructions, this is where you set up your document's cutoff instructions, signaling the start of the document's retention schedule. So there are multiple types of cutoff instructions, including time, so based on a specific cycle like monthly or yearly. Event would go back to kind of those records or properties and the events that you can create. Maybe a combination of both. An interval, so based on a certain passage of time following the filing date. So there's all kinds of different cutoff instructions that you can put in. And then if we take a look at retention schedules, this section is where you identify how long the records must be maintained once it's been cut off. So in Laserfiche, you bring in a document and it just sits there active until you cut it off. Once it gets cut off, that is when it starts its retention schedule and it goes into read-only mode for all users. And then this retention schedule again is where you can configure how long that should essentially be stored. So if we refer back to the Excel document, let's take a look at that retention schedule that we just pulled from the state website. So we need to maintain our audited financial yearly reports indefinitely after it's been audited. So the lucky thing about that is our review cycle, we don't have to worry about. The event is we can immediately cut it off once we bring it into the system because maybe we're not bringing in a document, bringing in these financial documents until they've been audited, and we bring them in to archive them in Laserfiche. And so if we needed to add a new event, we could go ahead and just click add. You can name it whatever you want to name it. And that's it. Super easy. And then if we go into our cutoff instructions, we again can have it set up so that it cuts off immediately. So we'll do an immediate cutoff. Again, this one was already created, so we don't have to do that. And then the retention schedule is set to permanent. Kind of one unique thing I wanted to call out in cloud that is a little bit different than self-hosted. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. So if we go into our instructions, if we have something identified as a permanent record, the final disposition should just be set to none. So that means nothing will happen and it will be set to permanent. It's kind of a maybe a little bit confusing, but that's how we signal to the system that this is a permanent record because there should be no final disposition, which means it just sits there forever. So we have our kind of schedules built out. It was pretty simple. We just said we have an event and we have our retention schedule, which is retained for indefinitely. And so now let's take a look at how we can set that up in the system manually. So I'm going to jump into our repository. And do have to X out of this for a second. So I'm in my repository. I'm going to navigate through the folder structure. So I'm going to go into Clerk Services, Finance, General Reporting, and we're going to add a document into our 2020 folder. And I'm going to minimize this. So I'm just going to drag and drop something. And so again, I'm going to show you the manual way to apply retention onto your documents in the system because this is actually very approachable, but long term you'll want to automate it. So we're going to drag and drop something. You could scan it in. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to apply any metadata, but I certainly could. And then I'm just going to import it. So here we've got our statement. And then if I go on the right-hand side and I click on our Records tab, I can go ahead and set Edit Properties. And then this is going to allow me to enter everything manually. So maybe I've had this financial statement sitting in my email for multiple days, and so I'm going to backdate it. And I'm actually going to backdate it to 2020 so I can show you some of the other pieces of the retention process. But going forward, you typically wouldn't have to set the filing date unless you, again, were hanging on to documents before bringing them into the system, and the filing date needs to be something different than the date that you actually bring it into Laserfiche. And there are ways to automate the filing date depending on your processes, where you can use maybe quick fields or workflow to automatically set that filing date for you. So then our cutoff instruction, we will do immediately. And then our retention schedule is permanent. And then we can go ahead and click save. So now what we'll see here is it's applied records retention directly to our document. So I do want to call out that records properties can be set up either on individual documents, which we call flexible records management, or you can also set it up on folders. So you can really do it either way. You would set it up on a folder if everything in that folder is following the same life cycle. So if we've got these annual reports in here and you actually are storing all the monthly statements that you have to retain for 2 years, instead of applying it individually to each document, you could apply it directly to the folder. So once we have retention on our document, we can see here that it automatically calculates the life cycle for us. This one is, again, a pretty basic example, but I want to walk you through it. So the document came in on 4/29/2020, or that was its record state. It was eligible for cutoff immediately. And so we can go ahead and manually cut it off. And so cutting off a record, again, indicates that this is no longer an editable document. This is becoming a record for retention. And so it becomes read-only to everyone, except for those records managers who can, of course, make changes to it if necessary. And so now we can see here it's eligible. Well, it says it's eligible for disposition, but there's no disposition that will take place because it is actually in permanent retention at this point. So what I want to show next is if we go into, or we scroll up to the top, we've got these records management, or this records management tab that we can go ahead and click on. And so we can run a search, and these are all pre-configured searches, which makes, again, using your records management really easy in Laserfiche. And so if you have the appropriate permissions, you can click on that records management and you can run these pre-configured reports. And so we can look for documents that are eligible for cutoff. I'm going to go ahead and include records. By default, it only looks for folders, but if you do the checkbox to include records, it's going to look for all documents that are eligible for cutoff. And then, like any Laserfiche search pane, you have the ability to adjust these column headers. So if you want to reorder it, or if you have a ton of documents that are in there ready for cutoff, some organizations do, some don't. You can use these column headers to sort for the information that's relevant. So maybe I want to search by creation date. We'll do it flip-flopped. And these documents were eligible for cutoff at the end of the calendar year in 2022. So I actually want to go ahead and cut them off. So you can individually select them and cut them off. And again, that's going to put them in the read-only state and start the retention. Or you can go ahead and highlight multiples or use the checkbox to highlight multiples and then cut them off, however you see fit. So again, once documents are cut off, then they sit there in read-only format until you are ready to dispose of them. So then you have another pre-configured report that you can select. So documents that are eligible for disposition. And again, it defaults to folders, but we can certainly include it on all records. And so we can see the documents that we had cut off earlier are now ready for disposition. So before I delete them, I want to show you how to do a legal hold. So in a cloud environment, or if you're using the web environment, you have access to all these views. But if you click on the Details tab, you can go ahead and add a hold on your document. So this would be like a legal hold for, an auditor coming through who wants to review documents of a certain type. So again, assuming you've got the appropriate permissions, you can go ahead and select Add Hold, Auto Tracking, Legal Hold. and then you can go ahead and just apply that. And so now this document can't actually be deleted, even though it is eligible for disposition. Because there's a legal hold on it, nobody can actually delete it. So that's how you can ensure that, if you're in the middle of an audit or something like that, those documents don't get accidentally deleted. And you can do that from any screen. You don't have to do that from this records management search screen. You can just do it from throughout the repository if you'd like. And then if you want to release the holds, if you've got permissions, you can go ahead and just X out of it. One other thing that I wanted to show is if I go back to the repository administration area, you can see a listing of all the documents that have holds within your repository. So if you want to triple check them out there, you certainly can. So if we jump over there to records, click on holds, we can see that there are a couple of documents here. And then if you select this, it will give you the hold reason, and then you can click here to view the entry directly if you wanted. So those are holds. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just destroy this record at this point. And so if we click back on our records tab, we can go ahead and say destroy. So click to confirm, destroy the record, metadata will be retained. So when you're setting up your retention policies, one of the questions that it asks is, do you want to maintain the metadata? And our configuration experts could guide you on whether you do or you don't want to maintain the metadata. But in many instances, we do retain the metadata so that we can build an automated report that lets you know which documents were deleted as of what date. And so we need the metadata in order to do that. And then also, if you retain the metadata, it kind of keeps a placeholder in your folder structure saying that this PO did exist, and it followed its appropriate retention cycle. And so that's why you can no longer see the document. And so we can see here, it changed our document icon to have this little kind of no symbol indicating that this is no longer an actual document. So if we go in to the folder where this is located, which I'm going to do by clicking on details and then clicking on the folder path, this will bring us directly there. We can see here we've got a couple of deleted records, or one is on a legal hold and then this one is the deleted one. So if I click on it, we'll see that there are no document pages, but I can view the records management information and I can see that it was cut off and then it was destroyed, again, following our procedures. So that is kind of a manual walkthrough. It was kind of a lot, but hopefully it made sense where you can individually select documents, click on the records properties, edit them, and apply them based on each document. You can do it in bulk too by highlighting more of them. I can't in this view, but you could, so that you can do them in bulk if needed. Otherwise, what we would recommend, and again, the whole premise of why we have you fill out this Excel document is so that we can help you automate it. So let me show you an example of how that can be done. So I'm going to go into my clerk services area and we have an auto filing process. So I'm just going to drag and drop this statement in. And I'm going to apply some metadata. So we're going to select our city clerk template. This is going to be, I don't know, a resolution as of April 1st. And then I'm just going to say roads. So you can add whatever keywords you want. So by bringing a document in, adding some metadata to the document, we have a workflow that then is set up to recognize that there's something that needs to happen. So if you're in a cloud environment, you get this little refresh notification here. So you can click refresh, and now our document is gone. And so we can either do a search for where that is, or I'm just going to go into our city council area, take a look at our resolutions, and then we've got our 2025 folder. And we can see as of today, I added this resolution in, it renamed it according to our standards, and then I can take a look at the records properties that were automatically applied. So we can see here, I didn't have to manually apply everything, the workflow did it for us. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So I'm not going to walk you through how to build a workflow because I am not a workflow expert, but I want to show you just kind of a simple version of what an auto-filing workflow could look like. But again, what we're looking at here, this workflow configuration is really good if you're trying to do it all on your own. But if you've got a lot of different document types and a lot of different retention schedules, chances are we would recommend that you set up a lookup table or a SQL database so that instead of having to build a conditional decision for each different document type, you're building a single workflow that says, hey, based on the document type that is selected, do a lookup in this table and then apply the appropriate retention set forth on that. So again, you wouldn't have to build each of these conditional decisions. But what we have here is our clerk auto-filing workflow. So our starting rule, retrieve the field values, and then based on this conditional decision, which is identifying the document type selected, then move the entry to the appropriate folder, rename it according to our standards, and then set the appropriate retention properties. So Laserfiche now, this has been changed in, I don't know, maybe the past 6-ish years, maybe less than that. You have the ability to set records properties through a workflow. So you can just simply drag and drop it, and then it walks you through the configuration. So if we've got an appointment list, it moves it to the boards and commissions park board folder. It renames it based on the field values that we have selected. So it's getting the document type plus the document date plus, whatever additional text is on that document. And then if we set the records management properties, we can select the cutoff instruction that we want. And then apply the retention schedule that we want, and then it is complete. So that's a quick walkthrough of what a workflow could look like. Again, this is not necessarily one that our team would always set up for you. It just kind of depends on your team and your infrastructure and how many different types of records properties we're working with versus how many different documents we're working with. So again, just an example. Otherwise, we would do those lookup tables where we key in all of that information into a table, and again, we do the lookup. So there are also ways where I had shown you how you can select a document and manually cut it off. But there are automation processes that can do that for you automatically behind the scenes too. So if I go back into our resolutions area, we've got a couple of folders that have some automation already set up. So these documents are all eligible for cutoff. So these were documents that had been added a long time ago. If I take a look at the records properties, I could certainly go ahead and cut them off. Or what you can have done is a nightly workflow maybe goes through your system and auto cuts off the documents. So I'm going to manually initiate that process here, but again, this is something that can be set up to run, every night or once a week, whatever you ultimately want it to be. So I'm starting that. And then we're going to go ahead and refresh. And now if we select that document, we can see that it no longer has that cutoff button that it was already, or it was automatically set by the workflow to be cut off. So again, that's something that would just happen versus me having to cut it off. Additionally, you can do that same type of thing for documents that are eligible for destruction, where you can have a workflow to do that for you. And then the final kind of really neat part that I wanted to show you is you can do this conclusion workflow, which again is something that would be automatic, but in my demonstration scenario, I just have to click to manually run it. But what this workflow is going to do is find any documents that were eligible for destruction and put together a report for us. So if I jump back into my repository, I can take a look at our records management area and see the destruction logs that get automatically created based on, when I run those workflows. So here's just a quick example of that destruction log that can maybe be emailed out to you, letting you know, hey, these documents had been destroyed. Or again, it could compile a list of documents that were eligible for destruction and allow you to designate them as deleted. So some states require keeping a destruction log of your documents. Some states don't. So again, it's just a matter of doing a little research on your end to identify what your team's actual needs are. And again, this is something that CDI can help you configure or not. So we jump back into our slideshow. Here's just another example of the destruction log. Again, I don't have my email set up, but it can say, hey, your files have been successfully deleted. Click here to view your log. And then here's just like another example of what a log could look like. So essentially, you're just using the workflow to create a table of information for documents that were deleted. So you can set that up. Then the next thing I wanted to do is just go through some resources. So don't know why I had to do this again. But again, I want to call out to go ahead and download that Getting Started with Records Management guide in the GoToWebinar screen. You can also navigate to this URL to download it. And then other resources that are available to you that I think are really good, which I thought were helpful as I was putting together this presentation, is Laserfiche Aspire. So here's the URL to get to the Laserfiche Aspire platform. And you can search for, what do you want to learn about, and just type in records management. And then it comes back with a ton of different videos or documents or overviews on records retention and records management and setting it up. And then as a reminder, if you are a current CDI client, we do extend free Aspire certifications to users. Just ask us for more details. It's just a matter of letting us know what courses you want to take or what certifications you want, and then we apply the credits to your account, and then you can go ahead and sign up for them. In the screenshot, though, you can see that most of these training, or all of the training resources, are free to everyone. You only have to pay to get the certification, which is testing your knowledge after the fact. So the ebooks, the Aspire platform, Laserfiche Answers is another really great resource, or you can reach out to the CDI team and we can help you with your records management design services. And so we can do an initial assessment, recommendation, put together a project plan, and then automate the entire process with your team. So from here, I'm going to open it up to any questions. All right, so we've got a question here. So is keep metadata the Laserfiche field's metadata information, or is it the information about the file itself? So it's both. It is the metadata fields of information that you key in, but it is also the document name. The ebook link, I will reach out and share with you directly. And again, if you are interested in the spreadsheet that I showed or any of the resources, definitely just plop your name in the questions box there, and I will reach out kind of individually. So you've got my contact information and then provide you those resources and you can work through them. Just looking to see if we've got any other questions. As I kind of wait for some more to potentially trickle in, again, these are just some additional helpful resources. So our website, our YouTube site, which is where this video will be available later. And then, of course, if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to help. I am by no means a configuration expert, but hopefully this kind of gave you an idea of how to get started, you know, and what some of those things mean in Laserfiche records administration to get you going. All right, with that, I'll close out. And again, if you've put anything into the questions answers that I haven't directly answered here, I will reach out and we'll go from there. Thank you, everyone.